Welcome back to episode number 91 of Raise the Banner podcast. We are your three co-hosts as usual. Ben changed his headliner to Mars was nuked by aliens. I don't know what that means, but we're going to roll with it.
That's all this actually.
All right. We three co-hosts, Zach Brewitt, Benny Ball Game, Dareth, myself, Matt Couture. We got a jam-packed episode, but to start us off, boys, how are we doing?
Good.
Doing well. Better now that I know about this headline game we can play.
Yeah. Maybe.
We had some fun.
Maybe the headline should be our state your takes for every episode, and we just close out with explaining why the headline is the way that it is.
Yeah,
that works.
Before we went live, maybe we'll just get more controversial by the episode.
We kicked off live stream by the end of the episode.
Yeah.
All right. Breaking news from Nick Rad. I asked him if he doesn't really believe in space, where is the fake International Space Station? His response: every satellite is within our own atmosphere.
All right. I mean,
it's a bunch of malarkey. It's a bunch of malarkey.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyways. Yeah, as you can see, the moon landing was fake, but we don't need to dive too far into that conversation. We are here to talk about the New England Patriots. We are here to talk about the Boston Red Sox. We are here to talk about a little bit maybe of the Boston Bruins. They do start tonight. I couldn't really honestly tell you a lot of what's going on with the Boston Bruins because I just, to tell you a lot about hockey in general, I just don't follow it the way I used to. They got a lot of new guys. Jeremy Swayman needs to come up big tonight and in the season in general if they want to have a chance to make some noise this year. But we are going to start us off with the Boston Red Sox. I do want to jump into a little bit of what went wrong. They obviously were eliminated. The last time we talked was just before Game 2, so we haven't had a chance to really get into what went wrong there in Game 2 and Game 3. As everybody knows, they fell off and lost both games to the Yankees. Zach, you obviously missed last week, so I'll give you the floor here. What went wrong in the last two games there, and what are you looking for really in terms of what you need to see this offseason?
Yeah, I mean, the two games they lost were really more of the same that we've been talking about with the defectiveness and deficiencies of this team, right? Jarren Duran misses that fly ball. You make that catch, right? Who knows if we win that game, whatever. The lack of power. I don't know that we had a home run. Maybe Trevor Story had one in the first game, but I don't remember. And then, kind of more runners in scoring position, just overall bad defense, Nathaniel Lowe as well. So I do put some blame on the players, obviously. But Breslow, has to know that you have to add more to the deadline, and we could talk about that more, I'm sure. But that was the biggest thing to me is just more of the same with this team is again, the lack of power and just defense. The pitching I thought was decent. Obviously with Giolito going down, you kind of knew that you had to win those first two games because Connolly early was good, not great. But again, given that he had a handful of starts in his career before going into a winner-take-all series in Yankee Stadium, was going to be a tough ask, no matter who it was. So to answer your question of what I want to see in the offseason is more depth, right? I don't really want to enter next year with David Hamilton on this team. Again, I don't want to enter the season with a lot of these same platoon guys, same kind of I saw a tweet today of Willie Abreu is a hot topic because yes, he was hurt, and that's kind of been another theme with him throughout his career. He's one of your best power hitters, 22 home runs, which I think was second on the team this year, but out often and with lefties. So if you're going to have it's a completely different team with lefties versus righties, that's a concern. And obviously we are a lefty-heavy lineup anyways. And then a legit number two, right? Do you go out and do what you did last year with Garrett Crochet When you missed out on him at the deadline, now you want to go get now you get him at the winter meetings. Do you do that same thing with Joe Ryan, Sandy Alcantara, Dylan Cease, one of these guys, a legit number 2. I don't know what Ben is shoveling into his mouth, but
potato salad.
Hell yeah. A legit number 2 starter, depth pieces that can actually handle the bat and are actually good on defense, and then power. Right, I would love to see someone like Pete Alonso coming here. I don't know that Kyle Schwarber, 2 things, is going to leave Philly, but also I don't know that he fits what Breslow and the front office want, which is the ability to move around players, right? He couldn't really play first base when he was here. Does that change? Has that changed when he's been primarily a first baseman, or I'm sorry, DH in Philly? I'm not sure. So Pete Alonso makes a lot more sense there if you want to move off, and I would move off from Tristan Casas as well. Drake May, is that Mahomes? Are those the top 4?
You see where they're walking into, like the graphic?
Oh, is that where Super Bowl is this year?
Yep.
Yeah, it's like,
hell yeah.
It's like it's for like going into it would be like the NFC Championship and the AFC Championship headline.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm looking for, right? Is upgrade the positions that need to be upgraded. You have to retain Bregman. Otherwise, Breslow is a catastrophic failure for trading away Devers. I mean, it already is a failure. You got nothing in return for him. Kyle Harrison stinks, or Jordan Hicks stinks, I should say, and Kyle Harrison is okay. We think you have to retain Bregman. If you let him walk for nothing, then you truly go into next year with no power bat and nothing in return for Devers. So you have to upgrade, I would say, first base, second base, and then number 2 starter and power bats.
All right. Any ball game?
I would agree. Except for I don't necessarily think they necessarily need to upgrade at second base. Only because I suspect that Trevor Story is not going to opt out. So I'm going to suspect that the inside track to second base is going to be Marcelo Mayer. And I'd be fine with Marcelo Mayer being your opening day second baseman. It all depends on his health. So if he's not ready to go, or you don't believe in him, or Trevor Story does opt out and he doesn't come back and he gets a big deal somewhere else, and now it's like, okay, well, if Marcelo is healthy, he's our shortstop. Well, of course, now second base becomes a priority. I wholeheartedly agree at first. I think, obviously, in an ideal world, if we want to have our cake and eat it too, they go get a guy like a Pete Alonso, who you could probably get him on a medium length deal. You might need to give him, 2 or 3 years. I'd have to look at his age. I don't think he's old per se, but I don't think you would necessarily need to give him more than a 3-year guarantee. So, who knows if he's interested in coming here. He was a topic of conversation during last offseason. And he kind of fell into that, like the Jordan Montgomery of 2 years ago, where he was holding out, and even Alex Bregman of this year, he was holding out for a long-term deal, never got it, and I think he settled on a 1-year contract to go back to Queens and play for the Mets. So first base is definitely a top priority. If you don't get Pete Alonso, a couple of guys that I wouldn't mind seeing here, although the profile isn't ideal, Vinny Pasquantino or Josh Naylor. Who would be relatively inexpensive, medium length contract option guys. Both are lefties, right? So it doesn't exactly fit the bill of bringing in a righty power bat. I'm right with Zach. Like, you have to figure out a way to keep Alex Bregman in Boston. I don't know what it would take. I think realistically, it kind of starts with, if he does opt out, then you kind of have to go to him and say, let's talk something like 3 or 4 years at, if it's a 4-year deal, you're probably, I would imagine the conversation is going to be somewhere in the high 20s of millions of dollars. If it's a 3-year deal, you might need to be more like 30 to 32 just because it's 1 year less. I would hate the idea of like a 3-year, $96 million deal, which is he gets a sizable pay raise on the annual side of things, money wise. But in terms of total dollars, right? So you're ripping up the old contract, or he opts out of the old contract, which means he doesn't get the deferred money in what starts in like 2031 or something. So if you give him a $396 million contract, the total dollars you would have paid him out over the 4 years would have worked out to be 116 million, which is a $4 million savings on what you signed him for, including the. But you got to figure out a way to keep him here. I understand he had a quad issue, which is it's not exactly a fluke injury, and you don't love soft tissue issues with your legs, especially for a guy who plays third base. But you got to figure out a way to keep him here. He loves Boston. He thrives in this atmosphere, and just the player profile, the elite defense at third. He's not an elite power bat, but he's a good power bat. I'd have to look at the numbers. I think if he had played a full season, he would have been somewhere in like the mid to upper 20s of home runs. Would he finish with 18 home runs, something like that? So, but the only other thing that I see as like a need in the offseason is you got to figure out a way to either trade for Joe Ryan or figure out some other guy who's a number two. I do like Dylan Cease, but not as a number two. I think you could sign him to be like a number three or a number four. But if you can figure out a way to bring in a Joe Ryan who would turn 30 in the middle of the season, I think if you trade for him in the offseason, you get him for 3 more years of arbitration. It's 2 or 3. So like that becomes a priority. And then less of a concern is I think they got to figure out the log jam in the outfield. Obviously with Roman Anthony fully healthy, you've got 4 legitimate everyday outfield caliber players. Obviously it's him, Abreu, Rafaela, and Duran. And so obviously one of those guys is the odd man out, and it's not Anthony, it's not Rafaela. And Abreu's looking at possibly winning a second consecutive Gold Glove in right field. I think you'd be really hard pressed to convince the organization that trading Willie Abreu is a smart decision. However, if you're using him to acquire, say, a Joe Ryan, I think you seriously have to consider moving him if that's what it would take to acquire Joe Ryan. I don't know if it would. And then, you kind of go from there. But yeah, those are my priorities. The bullpen's fine in my opinion. I think if you add some depth pieces, but the back end of the bullpen to me is fine. Like Whitlock and Chapman are as good as back end of the bullpen as you'll find on most teams. So that's fine. Maybe some depth guys, but number 2 starter, I think they have enough depth in the back of the rotation that they can figure it out. And then ideally a righty power bat.
Who did you mention as the potential piece for getting Joe Ryan?
So I said I would consider trading Willie or Abreu if that's what it would take to get Joe Ryan, only because if you trade Willie or Abreu, you immediately put Roman Anthony in right. So it's not like you're not at like a net negative. I think in an ideal world, you somehow move Duran, not Abreu, and then you put Roman in left, which again, left field's not easy to play, but left field at Fenway to me is easier to play than right field at Fenway. The margin for error in left is way bigger than the margin for error in right. Like if you misplay a ball in right field, like with the wrong guy, like that's probably a stand-up triple and might be an inside the park home run if you really botch it. Yep. But I think Roman Anthony could play right. You might have some growing pains early because he'd have to get used to it. But, if the conversation, with Minnesota is we only give you Joe Ryan if you give us Willie or Abreu.
Done.
Granted, if they're like, oh yeah, well, you need to give us Willie or Abreu, you need to give us Peyton Tolley or Connolly early, and you need to give us either Password or Luis Perales or, one of these other top prospects in the system, like slightly different conversation, but assuming it's a fair market value return, if the answer is it has to be Willie or Abreu, like you have to consider doing that because then you just slot Roman Anthony into right field, and you're filling in a much bigger need by getting a Joe Ryan.
Yeah, you're upgrading two positions. You're upgrading your starting right fielder, and you're upgrading your number two starter in the rotation. It's a no-brainer from that. But again, does that get it? But I agree with you. I would absolutely look to move Willier for someone like Joe Ryan.
Yeah, and my realistically, because the other thing, and it's not really a need per se, but I think you've got to figure out a way to move Masataka Yoshida.
Absolutely.
Am I okay if he's your DH batting in the bottom of the lineup? Sure. It's not what I want, but like, am I okay with it? Like, am I okay with him being the DH batting 7th or 8th or 6th? Okay. If that means that, we've got Roman Anthony at the top of the lineup, Bregman, Story, and then like a legit power bat, like a Pete Alonso in the middle of the order. Like, okay, fine. I can be okay with Masa batting, 7th in this lineup and DHing. But the problem with trading Yoshida is, in all likelihood, a team is going to tell you we would have to eat half of the contract, and I don't think John Henry is willing to eat much, if any, of Masa's contract to ship him out of town. It's just not his MO. He wasn't willing to eat money on Devers to get a better return. He's like, no, get the best return you can, where I don't have to keep paying Rafael Devers. If he's not willing to pay Rafael Devers to get a better return, I don't foresee him paying a team anything to get Masataka Yoshida out the door.
That's a different story, Benjamin.
It's really not. Like John Henry, it's really not.
Yes, it is. We just saw him eat money on the sale deal. Like, asking him to eat money on a 10-year contract where he's going to have to eat it for the next decade is so way different than asking him to eat it for the next 1 or 2 years.
But here's the thing: is when you're eating money on a player that's traded, you're not eating money over the length of a 10-year deal. You're writing him you're basically writing him a check now and say, here you go. Here's the portion of the salary that you don't want to pay.
That's not generally how it works.
I mean, you could be on a payment plan, sure, but you don't have to pay it off over the entirety of the remainder of the contract.
I mean, yeah, but that's usually how it ends up working out. Is like John Henry's not. So if Henry was going to have to pay out, say, $80 million of Devers' deal, he wasn't going to want to have to write an $80 million check with Devers to trade him. Versus if you have to pay up, say, 12 of Yoshida's deal, it's like if he has to pay $6,
it's going to be higher than that.
Okay, like you know what I'm talking about. If he's going to have to pay up 15 of his deal, like, and he has to, Ben, I'm going to drive to your house and I'm going to.
No.
Oh God. If he has to pick up 16 of his deal, that's over half. It's going to be okay.
Half of his contract is 18, but that's fine.
Okay. It's not the biggest deal if he has to pay $8 million a year for the next 2 years. Like, it's just a completely different angle in terms of eating money. He just ate $17 million to ship Story out, just so he can get an actual return. John Henry does not like winning.
He likes money. But yeah, I mean, and who knows, right? I understand the contract and the money situation is different between Yoshida and Devers, and there's some history of John Henry willing to eat money to get rid of players. But I don't know. I get the feeling that he's not going to be willing to pay $18 million to another team so that Yoshida doesn't play for us anymore. Just my gut instinct. But if you can figure out a way to do it, then I think you have to, right? If it means, you trade Duran and Yoshida, or you add Yoshida to a Willie or Abreu deal to get a Joe Ryan, like I think that has to be a conversation, just because, he's not a guy that I think really that fits. The problem is he's overpaid for what he gives you, which is what makes me feel like teams are not going to be willing to take him on unless the Red Sox are eating some of his contract.
I mean, they're going to have to eat a big portion of it to dump Yoshida. I mean, to go back and the beginning of all this, Joe Ryan's going to be the most likely target, and I spoke on this in a video that I pushed out earlier. The connection's already there, right? They already spoke with Joe Ryan. They already spoke with the Twins on this at the deadline. The most logical scenario, I think, here for every side is a deal that centers around Duran getting shipped out. Now, does he fit the Twins timeline and stuff like that? No, I don't think so. I don't know. Now, I don't know. I can't speak for the Twins. They don't seem like the brightest organization. But, you might need to get a third team involved, and that third team could be a team like the Padres, who we know absolutely loves Jarren Duran. So if you get a team like the Padres and they send prospects to the Twins, all of a sudden that becomes a lot more doable. Now you get a package that sends prospects from Padres to the Twins. All of a sudden you add in maybe a Perales and in a piece or two like that. And then you get Joe Ryan here, right? And in that sense, you clear up the outfield the cluster in the outfield. You add Joe Ryan as the number 2. And then just in that sense, right, they could not do anything else to that rotation. Basically, we'll replace Giolito with Joe Ryan. And the rotation's already in a solid spot. Not phenomenal, solid spot. Because that would put you with Crochet, Joe Ryan, a very, very, very legit 1-2. Like, beyond legit 1-2. Bayo as a number 3, which I think he showed, he kind of staggered a little bit at the end of the year, but he showed for the most part this year that he is a 3-ish type of pitcher.
Yep.
Then there's, as your 4 or 5, like it's a little bit of uncertainty, but they would have a handful of options for that 4 or 5 spot, whether that be a veteran like Crawford finally getting healthy back, whether it's Hunter Dobbins getting back healthy, Richard Fitz, early, Tolley, or, signing 1 or 2 other veterans, right? And then the other option obviously would be to go and sign another, like a Walker Buehler option, which I spoke on again in the video I released. And we know that there's going to be multiple other options, and we talked about it off the air, Ben, at certain points, but like a Dylan Cease, right? A Dylan Cease that could use a 1-year deal, a Shane Bieber that could be potentially looking at like a 1 or 2 year deal. Both guys could be looking at like prove it deals. The Cease is coming off I would say like a pretty down year for him. You don't know what he's going to be. His market will be. I mean, he'll probably get 3 or 4 or 5 year offers, but what are they going to be in terms of AAV? He might want a 1 year deal, like prove it type of, to regain his market. And then Bieber, I think, will probably have a pretty shaky market as well. Both guys fit into that, like, hey, come here. I think Bailey's reputation around the league is pretty good. Come here, regain your momentum, and then maybe hit the market again next offseason. And at that point, right, and it kind of would line up perfect for the Red Sox, is if you could sign a guy like that for 1 year, it helps them in the short term, but then you could extend Joe Ryan and it will kick in after that. So the money will kind of counteract. And 2, by the time that they leave, guys like Fitz, Dobbins, Tolley, and Early will kind of, and I guess this is optimism and expectation in one, will have become more established, right? They'll ideally be more ready by the mid next year, the end of next year. We'll have a better idea of what they are as players.
Yep.
And so ideally, like that, I think that's kind of like the perfect sense for the rotation. If you don't, and I guess you could still do this, but if you don't get a guy like Cease or Bieber, but even if you do, you can still do it. I would love for them to like get another rock solid bullpen piece. And Ben, I know you said like Whitlock and Chapman is a is a very good 1-2 in the back. But like, if they could get another reliable bullpen arm, I mean, Ben was like screaming all the playoffs, like, please don't put Weiser in the game.
Ugh.
He was like their number 3 bullpen arm this year. Like,
Can't have that next year.
You know what I mean? So they did, and so for Ben to be basically saying, I don't want them to be using their 3rd bullpen arm in the playoffs, tells me like maybe they should find another option that is maybe a little bit more trusting. He had his up and down moments. I think Ben was being a little bit dramatic in that, but that's also
he got burned out at the end. You couldn't trust him with runners on or inherited runners. He was a cement mixer curveball waiting to happen. Yeah, they did.
They overused him. They rode him into the ground throughout the season for sure. But again, that's another option that like I would really like them to see them do is like get another rock solid good bullpen arm that if you get into the 7th inning of a playoff game, right, and everyone's ready to go, you get into the 7th inning and you can go boom, 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 back to back, and you got 3 dominant relievers. Like you put teams on notice of like you better have that lead heading into the 7th inning because if you don't, you're in trouble. And we kind of had that a little bit with Whitlock and Chapman, but obviously, like we only played three games, and we didn't have the lead into those scenarios. Obviously,
yeah. I mean, there's a couple of guys like bullpen wise that would be interesting for me. Michael Soroka, who's a bullpen arm in the Cubs organization right now, and then AJ Minter, who the Red Sox were tied to loosely.
He got hurt, right?
But yeah, I mean, they're both still young. I mean, Soroka's I think 28, 29. Minter's a little older. I think he's 32.
There's also what's his face from the Padres that I assume they're going to let him go. They brought in.
Well, they have Estrada, Suarez. Okay.
He's going to be a free agent. They just traded for
Mason
what's
Miller.
his face from
Mason Miller.
So I have a hard time imagining they're going to spend money to keep Suarez too.
I would agree. So
I don't know what Suarez wants to be if he'll get paid as a closer, but
yeah, and I mean another name to throw out there. So I like the Dylan Cease option. I mean, to your point, it wasn't a good year by him. Having said that, it wasn't a terrible year. The nice thing that you get at a Dylan Cease is if you include the COVID year, which again was shortened, so take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
He's basically pitched in every possible game that he was eligible to pitch in.
Yeah.
Since he became a full-time starter in 2020. Again, he only made 12 starts, but that's because they only played 60 games. So that's more or less a full season for a pitcher.
Well, we thought that with Giolito, and then he blew out his arm.
So
the second he got here.
But Giolito didn't come here without a history of arm problems either. Like Giolito.
That's what I'm saying though. Giolito came here, and he was like he's the bulldog. He's going to give you 30 plus starts a game. Like he's going to be good to go. And then he comes here and then he blew out his arm.
No, what I'm saying though,
I thought he was already signed with a blown out arm. That was like the Chaim Bloom special.
Lucas Giolito came here with a history of arm problems.
Oh,
Lucas Giolito. Yes.
Maybe years prior, like many years prior, but he was a bulldog. Like he had gone 30 plus starts for like many years prior to that.
That's not correct.
I thought he was signed with the intention of him missing the first year and then coming back the second year.
No, that was Lucas. That was Pop. That was multiple other guys.
Pablo Sandoval.
That was the famous Chaim Bloom thing where he would sign guys that were injured.
Yeah, he did that. He did that with not Pablo Sandoval. Sandoval was
Adalberto Mondesi.
He did that with
Patrick Sandoval.
Patrick Sandoval.
Who was the lefty that he did that with?
Wasn't that Sandoval?
James
Yes,
Paxton.
but no. James Paxton.
Yeah.
Oh, yes,
But
yes, yes.
so when Giolito first came up with the Nationals and the White Sox, he had some arm problems. He only made 11 starts over 2 seasons in 2016 and 2017. But then so 2018 32 starts, 2019 29 starts, and then 12 during the COVID year, and then in the 2 years post COVID, prior to it was 31 and 30. Then he made 33 starts in 2023, he was traded from Chicago to the Angels. And then traded again to the, I don't know if they were the Guardians at this point.
He was released by the Angels and then picked up by the
Angels.
Guardians.
Oh, the Angels cut him. Yeah, and then that's right. Okay, but he got traded to LA, and then obviously he needed Tommy John last year, and then pitched this year 26 starts. So
like I said, I was right. So I would accept apologies.
I was right. He signed in 2024 and missed the entire year, and then he did the.
Yes, but he blew out his arm in spring training.
Oh, it's spring training. I thought he blew it out at the very end.
No, they didn't.
So then, never mind. I'm wrong.
No, they didn't sign him. But when he first came up into the big leagues, he had some arm issues back in his early 20s. I mean, obviously, elbows are finicky, right? Like you can blow out your elbow anytime. But when you look at a guy like Dylan Cease, right? So Dylan Cease, aside from, I'm just looking at his numbers. So like Giolito in his full seasons has only one time exceeded 180 innings. Dylan Cease has done that multiple times. I mean, sure, like you could probably put Dylan Cease into a similar category as Giolito. But just in terms of not an expensive investment, a guy who is a proven innings eater. I mean, obviously we weren't expecting Giolito to blow his arm out, but if you can't get a guy like him, I wouldn't hate the idea, although I don't love having multiple lefties in your rotation. Although I think that I
don't really care about that.
You have a guy like Framber Valdez, who's a free agent this offseason, who is a decent middle of the rotation guy who, again, eats innings. You might luck into a decent strikeout season every once in a while, because I think there's a couple of years ago he had like back-to-back 200 plus strikeout seasons. He's just not that guy anymore. I think he's 34. But you could but that's a decent guy who, a veteran, like low financial, like short-term investment that wouldn't necessarily get in the way of the long-term development of Hunter Dobbins, Dick Fitz, Connolly, early Peyton Tolley.
Speaking of options for next year, Patrick Sandoval will be another option as well. Completely unreliable in terms of what to expect, but he will. Like, we have no idea what to expect. But at one point, he was a pretty damn good pitcher, like a couple of years ago, before things kind of blew up and his arm blew up.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. No, I do want to transition though. We'll have plenty of off-season talk for the Patriots. I am going to start this up as basically a new episode, because I do want to kind of group this into 2 different episodes if we can. So I'm going to do a little quick new intro of episode number 92. So bear with me. All right. And welcome back to episode number 93 of Raise the Banner Podcast. It is your 3 co-hosts as usual. Ben, I just said